The terms soul and spirit often get used very interchangeably, making it very confusing for someone who might be a spiritual seeker on the spiritual path. For instance, Christianity uses those terms differently than, say, in Eastern spiritual tradition. And then we have New Age spirituality, which has actually borrowed the terms soul and spirit from Eastern spiritual tradition. And the problem is that sometimes New Age spirituality lacks rigor in its distinction between soul and spirit. So in this video, I'm going to explain the difference between soul and spirit according to yoga philosophy. Hi there, I'm Lisa Ingalls Witter, and welcome to my channel where I help spiritual seekers just like you to get simple answers to deep spiritual questions. Please do subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I put out new videos every week. Soul and spirit are two terms that spiritual seekers sometimes use interchangeably. And on the one hand, it's totally understandable because in Western spiritual traditions, they tend to define those terms very differently than Eastern spiritual traditions. So first of all, we have to look at where are we defining these terms in terms of the East or the West. And then what can also get really confusing is that New Age spirituality tends to use these terms sort of softly or with not a lot of rigor around them. And so the distinction gets lost. Oftentimes when you go online and Google, spirit or soul, and what pops up is an article by someone who is sort of what I would call a soft spiritual seeker, or someone who doesn't have rigor around their spiritual practice. And when I say rigor in terms of understanding sacred text. So I'm going to give to you the definition of soul and spirit as it pertains to Eastern spiritual tradition, specifically yoga, and we're going to look specifically at the text that we're going to use is the Bhagavad Gita. And the Bhagavad Gita is sort of like, or has been called, the Bible of Hinduism. And most people who are on the path of yoga would know the Bhagavad Gita because it's one of the most popular spiritual texts out there. But in particular, what I love about this particular one is that it's a commentary by Paramahansa Yogananda, and most people who know his name know him because he wrote the book Autobiography of a Yogi, which has sold millions and millions of copies. And there's no reason for me to give you the definition of soul and spirit when Paramahansa Yogananda can do a much better job than me. So I'm going to go ahead and read from you a little tiny bit of commentary from Paramahansa Yogananda on the Bhagavad Gita. So I'm going to begin by reading chapter 2, verse 20 of the Bhagavad Gita, which says this: "The self is never born, nor does it ever perish, nor, having come into existence, will it again cease to be. It is birthless, eternal, changeless, ever same, unaffected by the usual processes associated with time. It is not slain when the body is killed." So let's look at the commentary that Paramahansa Yogananda says about this verse, because he specifically refers to and describes the difference between soul and spirit here. So this is, again, directly from Paramahansa Yogananda's commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, and it's called, if you're interested in it, God Talks with Arjuna, the Bhagavad Gita, the Royal Science of God Realization. If you're interested in getting that book, you can get it through the Self-Realization Fellowship, and I'm not doing it as an affiliate, just telling you where you can get it. All right, so let's look at what Paramahansa Yogananda says. He says this: "The soul, in essence, the reflection of spirit, never undergoes the pangs of birth nor the throes of death, nor having once been projected from the womb of immortal spirit, will the soul, on return to the spirit, lose its individuality. The soul, dwelling in the destructible body, is ever constant through all cycles of bodily disintegrations. It does not taste death, even when the body quaffs that fatal cup of hemlock. The body, as a part of matter, is spoken of as undergoing the following 6 transformations of impermanent nature: birth, existence, development, change, decay, and annihilation. The man dwelling in a perishable body forgets the imperishable soul within it. His body-identified consciousness is aware only of its 6 conditions. The wise man learns by meditation to differentiate between the indwelling immortal soul and its perishable bodily encasement. People who believe that the absolute spirit, ever existing, ever conscious, ever new bliss, is immortal must also accept the truth that its reflection, the soul, even though encased in a mortal body, is immortal too. As God is immortal, every man's soul, made in the image of God, must also be immortal. The difference between soul and spirit is this: the spirit is ever existing, ever conscious, ever new, omnipresent joy. The soul is the individualized reflection of ever existing, ever conscious, ever new joy confined within the body of each and every being. Souls are the radiating rays of spirit, individualized as formless, vibrationless atoms and tissues of spirit. Hence, they are coexistent with spirit and of the same essence as the sun and its rays are one. The outer surface of the soul's consciousness that is cloaked with the instrumentalities of the ego, mind, and senses undergoes the permutations of nature, but the soul's essence remains inviolable. So what we come to understand through Yogananda's commentary is that the spirit is ever existing, ever conscious, ever omnipresent joy, which we also know in yoga as Satchitananda. And the soul is the individualized reflection of spirit that's confined within the body. Now, he goes on in this commentary to give this really beautiful analogy that I also want to read to you. So let's take a look at that analogy. So this is what Yogananda writes. He says that the following analogy gives an illustration of the nature and immortality of the soul. And this is the analogy. And he also prefaces this by saying that no analogies are perfect in expressing these absolute truths, but they do help the mind to image abstract concepts. All right, so here's his analogy. The moon is reflected in a cup containing water. The cup is broken and the water runs out. Where does the reflection of the moon go? The reflection of the moon may be said to have returned to its inseparable identity in the moon itself. Now, if another cup of water is placed under the moon, another reflection of the moon would be reincarnated. The soul is similarly reflected in the bodily cup filled with the water of the mind. Within it, we see the moon soul circumscribed by the bodily limitations as the reflection of the omnipresent moon of spirit. With the destruction of the body cup, the moon reflection may for a time disappear in the spirit. But by use of the power of free choice bestowed on it as the image of spirit, it created desires and karma while on earth that cause it to choose to be reflected again as the moon soul within another bodily cup. Thus, though the bodies of man may be mortal and changeable, immortal is the soul within them. The reflected moon, circumscribed by a little cup, becomes, at the destruction of the cup, the one moon whose rays spread over the sky. Similarly, the soul, when fully liberated from imprisoning desires, becomes omnipresent, like the spirit. So I want to point out here that one of the things that Paramahansa Yogananda stresses in his commentary on this distinction between soul and spirit is that he says, the wise man learns that by meditation he can differentiate between the indwelling immortal soul and its perishable bodily encasement. So meditation is critical, just as all Eastern spiritual tradition will say. Now, the other thing that's really important in understanding what is the soul and what is spirit and how they work together, what is the relationship between soul and spirit, it's very important to understand that relationship between soul and spirit if we want to understand how to cultivate intuition, which I'm going to be covering in another video because that's critical as well when you're on the spiritual path. So it is time for question of the day. What insights did you have about the soul and the spirit? I'd love to hear them in the comments below. Please do let me know. Or if you have any other questions or have any requests for videos that you'd like me to make, leave them in the comments below. One of the best ways, as I just said, for you to have a direct experience of your soul and your spirit is through meditation. So if you're looking for a little bit of help or guidance with your meditation practice, I have something for you. I have a free audio download that takes you through the 3 phases of a meditation practice, and you can get that by clicking the link that is below in the description. So thanks so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please do click the like button. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I invite you to do that as well. And be sure to click on the notifications button so that you get notifications of any new videos that I put out, which happens every week. And until next time, take care. Namaste.